Sabine hummed a gentle tune as her needle danced through the rich silk. Sunlight streamed into the bustling palace sewing room, illuminating the vibrant threads and fabrics piled high around her. Her nimble fingers moved with practiced ease, transforming the shimmering material into a gown fit for a princess. She was the most skilled seamstress in the palace, her stitches as neat and precise as a row of tiny pearls. But her talent often went unnoticed, overshadowed by the whispers and giggles that followed her wherever she went. "Look at her," the noble women would sneer, their voices laced with disdain. "She eats like a pig and waddles like a duck." Sabine would lower her head, pretending not to hear, her cheeks flushing with shame. She loved her work, the feel of the fabrics beneath her fingertips, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could escape the cruel jabs and find solace in the rhythm of her needle. When the other seamstresses gossiped about the latest court intrigue or the handsome prince, Sabine remained silent, her thoughts far away. In the quiet of her small workroom, hidden amongst bolts of velvet and satin, she kept a secret treasure. A small, leather-bound book filled with her poetry. Words flowed from her pen like a hidden stream, expressing the emotions she kept locked away from the world. She wrote of the beauty she found in the everyday, the kindness of the kitchen maids, the vibrant colors of the market stalls, the strength she found within herself. Her poems were her refuge, a place where she could be truly herself, free from the judgment of others. No one in the palace knew of her secret passion, not even her closest friend, Ilara, who worked beside her at the sewing table. Sabine feared their ridicule more than anything, afraid that her words would be mocked and dismissed as easily as her appearance. So she kept her poems hidden, tucked away in her workroom, sharing them only with the silent walls and the dancing dust motes in the sunlit air. The grand ballroom shimmered with light. Crystal chandeliers cast a dazzling glow on the marble floors, reflecting in the polished silver trays laden with delicacies. Noblemen in velvet jackets and ladies in shimmering gowns swirled around the room, their laughter echoing through the high-ceilinged hall. Prince Irfan, however, found little joy in the lavish display. He preferred the quiet company of the palace servants, their simple stories and honest laughter, to the empty chatter of the court. He often slipped away from the grand banquets, seeking refuge in the kitchens or the sewing room, where he could engage in genuine conversation, free from the pretense and artifice of the nobility. Tonight, he found himself drawn to the familiar hum of activity coming from the sewing room. He pushed open the door, the scent of fabric and beeswax filling his senses. Sabine was there, her back to him, her hands moving deftly over a length of emerald-green silk. He watched her for a moment, admiring her focus and the quiet grace of her movements. He was about to speak when a shrill laugh pierced the air. Lady Lamis, a slender woman with a sharp nose and an even sharper tongue, entered the room, her eyes fixed on Sabine. "Look at her," Lamis sneered, gesturing towards Sabine with a flick of her wrist, "waddling around like a prized sow." Several other noblewomen tittered, their eyes filled with cruel amusement. Sabine's shoulders slumped, her head bowed in shame. Irfan felt a surge of anger. He knew Lamis's cruelty. He had witnessed her venomous words and scheming ways on countless occasions. He stepped forward, his voice clear and strong. "Lady Lamis," he said, his eyes meeting hers, "your words are unbecoming of a noblewoman." Lamis's face flushed, but before she could retort, a commotion erupted in the ballroom. The music swelled, signaling the start of the first dance. Sabine, tasked with carrying a tray of drinks, hurried towards the ballroom door. As she passed Lamis, her foot caught on the hem of Lamis's gown, the fabric deliberately loosened. Sabine stumbled, the tray clattering to the floor, the drinks splashing across the polished marble. The ballroom erupted in laughter. Cruel whispers filled the air. "Clumsy oaf!" someone shouted. "She can't even walk without tripping," another jeered. Sabine sat on the floor amidst the shattered glass and spilled wine, her face burning with shame. Irfan rushed to her side, extending his hand. He helped her to her feet, his eyes filled with compassion. Ignoring the stares and whispers of the court, he addressed the room, his voice ringing with authority. "She has the heart of a queen," he declared, looking directly at Sabine. He then offered his hand, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "May I have this dance?" Sabine's hand trembled slightly as she placed it in Prince Irfan's. The music swelled, a lively waltz filling the grand ballroom. She had never danced with a prince before, never even imagined such a thing. She usually watched from the sidelines, a silent observer of the glittering spectacle. Now she was the center of attention, all eyes upon her. She felt a blush creep up her neck, but Irfan's warm smile reassured her. He led her onto the dance floor, his hand firm but gentle on her waist. As they began to waltz, Sabine's initial nervousness melted away. Irfan was a surprisingly graceful dancer, his movements fluid and effortless. He guided her with ease, his eyes never leaving hers. The whispers and stares of the court faded into the background as she lost herself in the rhythm of the music and the warmth of his presence. She had never felt so seen, so valued. "You are a beautiful dancer," Irfan said, his voice low and sincere. Sabine looked up at him, surprised. No one had ever called her beautiful before. She usually received only cruel taunts about her weight. "Thank you, Your Highness," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please call me Irfan," he said, his eyes twinkling. "And you must call me Sabine," she responded, a small smile gracing her lips. As they danced, they talked. Not about the weather or the latest court gossip, but about real things. Irfan spoke of his love for books and his fascination with the stars. Sabine shared her passion for sewing and the quiet joy she found in creating beautiful things. She didn't mention her poetry, the secret she held so close to her heart. It felt too vulnerable, too precious to share with someone she barely knew, even a prince. Irfan listened intently to her every word, his gaze never wavering. He was captivated by her gentle spirit and the quiet strength that radiated from her. He had met countless noblewomen, all vying for his attention, but none had captured his interest like Sabine. He found her refreshing honesty and genuine warmth, a welcome change from the artificial smiles and empty conversations of the court. The dance ended too soon. As Irfan led her back to the edge of the dance floor, their hands lingered for a moment. A silent acknowledgement of the connection that had formed between them, a spark of something more than just a dance. Stolen glances were exchanged across the crowded ballroom, a silent promise of something yet to come. The palace gardens were a hidden oasis, a tranquil escape from the bustling activity of the court. Tall hedges formed a labyrinth of green pathways, offering seclusion and privacy. Fragrant roses climbed trellised arches, their vibrant blooms filling the air with a sweet perfume. A marble fountain gurgled softly in the center of a small courtyard, its gentle melody a soothing counterpoint to the chirping of birds hidden amongst the leaves. It was here, in this secret sanctuary, that Irfan and Sabine began to meet. Their first meeting was accidental. Sabine had sought refuge in the gardens, seeking solace from the whispers and stares that followed her in the palace corridors. Irfan, drawn by the same desire for tranquility, had stumbled upon her sitting beneath a willow tree, her head bent over a small book. He recognized the leather-bound volume instantly. He had seen it peeking out from beneath piles of fabric in the sewing room. He had resisted the urge to ask her about it, respecting her privacy. He approached her cautiously, not wanting to startle her. "Forgive me," he said softly. "I didn't mean to intrude." Sabine looked up, startled, her cheeks flushing slightly. She quickly closed the book, tucking it away beneath her shawl. "Your Highness," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, call me Irfan," he said, a gentle smile gracing his lips. He sat down beside her on the cool grass, the distance between them respectful yet inviting. They talked for hours that day, the time passing unnoticed as they shared stories and dreams. Sabine, emboldened by Irfan's genuine interest, spoke of her love for poetry, her voice filled with passion. She hesitated, then finally, with trembling hands, she showed him the small leather-bound book filled with her verses. Irfan listened intently as she read aloud, his heart moved by the beauty and depth of her words. He saw a different side of Sabine, a hidden intellect and sensitivity that belied her quiet demeanor. Their secret meetings became a regular occurrence. They would steal away to the gardens whenever they could, finding comfort and solace in each other's company. They spoke of their hopes and fears, their dreams for the future, and the challenges they faced in the present. Irfan confided in Sabine about the pressures of his royal duties, the expectations of his family, and the loneliness he often felt amidst the grandeur of the court. Sabine shared her struggles with the constant ridicule and judgment she endured, the pain of feeling unseen and undervalued. With each meeting, their bond deepened. They found in each other a kindred spirit, a confidant who understood their hidden vulnerabilities and celebrated their unique strengths. The gardens became their sanctuary, a place where they could be truly themselves, free from the pretense and expectations of the world outside. Their stolen moments amidst the fragrant roses and the gentle murmur of the fountain became a source of strength and solace, a testament to the blossoming love that was taking root in their hearts. The whispers started subtly, like the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. At first, they were confined to the hushed corners of the sewing room, amongst the seamstresses and their needles. "Did you see the prince dancing with Sabine?" one would whisper, her eyes wide with surprise. "He held her hand for so long," another would add, a sly smile playing on her lips. The rumors spread like wildfire, quickly reaching the gilded halls of the court. Noblewomen, their faces painted with shock and disapproval, gossiped behind their fans. "A seamstress, can you imagine? The prince must be mad. She's twice his size." Sabine, accustomed to being the object of ridicule, found herself the subject of a different kind of attention. The stares were no longer filled with open disdain, but with a mixture of curiosity and speculation. She felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. She had never sought attention, always preferring to remain in the shadows. Now she was thrust into the spotlight, the subject of courtly gossip. She confided in Ilara, her closest friend in the sewing room. They sat together in Sabine's small workroom, surrounded by bolts of fabric and the comforting scent of beeswax. "I don't understand it, Ilara," Sabine said, her voice laced with worry. "Why would the prince even notice me? I'm just a simple seamstress." Ilara, a kind and practical woman, placed a reassuring hand on Sabine's arm. "He sees something in you, Sabine," she said gently. "Something the others don't see. He sees your kindness, your strength, your beautiful spirit." Sabine shook her head, unconvinced. "I fear he's making a statement, Ilara, using me to prove a point. He'll tire of me soon enough, and then where will I be? The laughingstock of the entire court." Ilara squeezed her hand. "Don't think like that, Sabine. Give him a chance. Trust your heart." But Sabine's fears continued to grow, fueled by the whispers and rumors that swirled around her like a suffocating cloud. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being used, a pawn in a game she didn't understand. She longed for the quiet anonymity of her sewing room, the simple comfort of her needle and thread. She wished she could disappear back into the shadows, away from the prying eyes and the endless speculation. The prince's attention, once a fleeting moment of kindness, had become a heavy burden, a source of fear and uncertainty. Lady Lamis surveyed the ballroom, her sharp eyes scanning the glittering crowd. She adjusted the emerald necklace that rested against her slender throat, a gift from a smitten duke. Her lips curled into a thin smile. She was the most sought-after woman in the court, admired for her beauty, her wit, and her impeccable taste. Prince Irfan, however, remained stubbornly immune to her charms. He preferred the company of books and servants to her sparkling conversation and elegant gowns. This she found utterly unacceptable. Irfan was hers by right. He was the prince, and she, Lady Lamis, was the perfect princess. The thought of him showing interest in a common seamstress, a plump, clumsy girl like Sabine, filled her with a burning rage. Lamis had observed the growing connection between Irfan and Sabine with a mixture of disbelief and fury. She had witnessed their stolen glances across the ballroom, their secret meetings in the palace gardens. She had heard the whispers, the growing speculation about the prince's unusual affection for the seamstress. It was a scandal, an affront to her dignity and her ambition. She would not allow it to continue. She found Sabine in the sewing room, surrounded by piles of fabric, her head bent over her work. Lamis approached her, her footsteps silent on the polished wooden floor. "So," she began, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "the little seamstress has caught the prince's eye. Quite the achievement, wouldn't you say?" Sabine looked up, startled, her needle pricking her finger. A drop of blood welled up, staining the delicate silk she was working on. She quickly wiped it away, her cheeks flushing with shame. "Lady Lamis," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Don't! Lady Lamis me!" Lamis snapped, her eyes flashing. "You think you can steal the prince away from me? You a commoner, with your clumsy ways and your ample figure?" She circled Sabine, her gaze lingering on her curves with open disdain. "He's just amusing himself with you, you know. He'll tire of you soon enough, just like he tires of all his little toys." Sabine's hands tightened around the fabric, her knuckles turning white. She wanted to retort, to defend herself against Lamis's cruel words, but she couldn't find her voice. She had endured such taunts her entire life, learning to silence her pain, to hide her hurt beneath a mask of quiet resignation. Lamis continued her assault, her voice laced with venom. "You're nothing but a novelty to him, a fleeting amusement. He'll never marry you. He'll marry a princess, someone of his own kind, someone like me." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Mark my words, little seamstress. I will not let you ruin my plans. I will have Prince Irfan, and you will be nothing but a forgotten footnote in his life." With a final dismissive flick of her wrist, Lamis turned and swept out of the room, leaving Sabine trembling in her wake. The seeds of her plot had been sown, and a dangerous game had begun. The grand ballroom glittered in anticipation of the upcoming royal ball. Servants scurried about, polishing the already gleaming chandeliers and arranging fragrant lilies in crystal vases. Lady Lamis watched the preparations, a sinister glint in her eyes. Her plan was simple, yet devastating. She would sabotage one of the massive chandeliers, ensuring it would fall during the ball, creating chaos and fear. In the ensuing panic, she hoped to blame Sabine, the clumsy seamstress, for the near disaster. It would be easy enough to plant some evidence, a misplaced tool or a torn piece of fabric, to implicate the unsuspecting girl. Lamis waited until the ballroom was empty, the servants having retired for the night. She slipped in unnoticed, her movements swift and silent. She climbed a ladder, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. She located the chandelier she had chosen, its intricate crystals shimmering in the dim light. With a small, sharp knife, she carefully severed one of the supporting chains, ensuring the damage wouldn't be immediately apparent. She then descended the ladder, her heart racing, and slipped back out into the silent corridors of the palace, a satisfied smirk on her face. Meanwhile, in the Queen's private chambers, a different kind of plotting was taking place. Queen Zarifa sat opposite her son, Irfan, her brow furrowed with concern. "Irfan, my dear," she began, her voice gentle yet firm, "we must talk about your future, about your duty to the kingdom." Irfan sighed. He knew what was coming. His mother had been hinting at it for weeks. "Mother, I know what you're going to say," he said, his voice weary. "You want me to marry a princess." It is your duty, Irfan," the Queen insisted. "The kingdom needs a strong alliance. Princess Amara of Eldoria would make a suitable queen. She is beautiful, intelligent, and comes from a powerful family." Irfan shook his head. "Mother, I respect Princess Amara, but I do not love her. Marriage should be based on love, not political expediency." The Queen's face hardened. "Love is a luxury, Irfan, one that a prince cannot always afford. Your duty is to the kingdom, not to your heart." Irfan's frustration grew. He had always respected his mother, but on this matter they were at an impasse. He could not imagine marrying someone he did not love, someone who did not share his values. He thought of Sabine, her gentle smile, her kind heart, her quiet strength. He knew his mother would never approve of a match with a common seamstress, but the thought of spending his life with anyone else filled him with a sense of dread. The pressure mounted on Irfan from all sides. The court buzzed with rumors of the upcoming royal ball, of the foreign princess who would soon arrive, of the impending marriage that would secure the kingdom's future. Irfan felt trapped, caught between his duty to his family and the desires of his heart. He knew he had to make a choice that would determine not only his own happiness, but the fate of his kingdom. Irfan paced the length of his study, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him like a physical burden. His mother's words echoed in his ears. "Duty to the kingdom, not to your heart." He understood her concerns, the need for a strong alliance, the importance of securing the kingdom's future. But the thought of marrying Princess Amara, a woman he barely knew, filled him with a sense of emptiness. He respected her, admired her intelligence and grace, but he felt no spark, no connection. His heart belonged to another. He thought of Sabine, her laughter echoing in the palace gardens, her hand resting gently in his during their stolen dances. He remembered the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of her poetry, the passion that radiated from her when she described the beauty she found in the everyday world. He knew his mother would never approve, a seamstress, a commoner, as his queen. The court would be in an uproar. The whispers and rumors would escalate into a full-blown scandal. But the thought of living a life without Sabine, of marrying a woman he didn't love, was unbearable. He had found in her a kindred spirit, a confidant, a love he never thought possible. He admired her strength, her resilience in the face of constant ridicule. He valued her kindness, her compassion for others, her ability to find joy in the simplest things. These were the qualities of a true queen, he believed, not lineage or wealth or social standing. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration growing. He felt torn, divided between his duty to his family and the desires of his own heart. He knew he couldn't keep seeing Sabine in secret. Their clandestine meetings were becoming increasingly risky, the whispers and rumors growing louder with each passing day. He had to make a choice, and soon. But what choice was there to make? How could he reconcile his love for Sabine with his responsibilities as a prince? He looked out the window, his gaze falling upon the bustling city below. His people, his kingdom, depended on him. He couldn't let them down. He couldn't let his personal desires jeopardize the stability and security of his realm. But could he truly sacrifice his own happiness for the sake of duty? The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered, unresolved. He felt trapped, caught in a web of conflicting loyalties, unsure which path to take. Sabine sat in her small workroom, the discarded scraps of silk scattered around her like fallen leaves. She held a crumpled piece of parchment in her hand, a half-written poem filled with words of doubt and fear. Lady Lammis's cruel taunts echoed in her ears, fueling the insecurities that had plagued her for so long. Was she truly nothing more than a fleeting amusement for the prince? A novelty to be discarded when he tired of the game? A gentle knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Elara entered, her face etched with concern. She had witnessed Lammis's venomous attack on Sabine, and she had seen the devastating effect it had had on her friend. She sat beside Sabine, her hand resting gently on her arm. "Sabine," she said softly, "you mustn't let Lammis's words poison your heart. She's jealous, that's all. Jealous of the connection you have with the prince, of the kindness and strength she can never possess." Sabine shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "But what if she's right, Elara? What if Irfan is just using me? What if he tires of me and casts me aside?" Elara squeezed her hand. "He wouldn't do that, Sabine. I've seen the way he looks at you. He cares for you. He sees the real you, the beautiful soul that hides beneath your quiet exterior." Sabine looked at Elara, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. "Do you really think so?" Elara nodded. "I know so, and I'm not the only one." She paused, then continued in a hushed tone. "The other servants, the kitchen maids, the stable boys, they all see it too. They admire your kindness, your gentle spirit. They've seen how you treat them with respect, how you offer a helping hand or a kind word when they need it most. They're on your side, Sabine. They'll stand by you no matter what." Sabine was surprised. She had always kept to herself, focusing on her work, trying to avoid the whispers and stares. She hadn't realized that she had made such an impact on the other servants. A small smile touched her lips. "There are more of us who believe in you than you realize," Elara continued. "We've seen Lammis's cruelty, her scheming ways. We know she's not to be trusted. We'll watch out for you, Sabine. We'll protect you from her venomous words and her wicked plots." A sense of warmth spread through Sabine's chest. She was not alone. She had allies, friends who believed in her, who saw her worth, who valued her for who she truly was. A hidden alliance was forming, a network of support woven together by kindness and shared understanding. It was a small spark of hope in a world that often felt dark and unforgiving, a reminder that even in the shadows light could be found. And with that newfound strength, Sabine felt a surge of determination. She would not let Lammis's cruelty break her. She would not hide in the shadows. She would face her fears, embrace her true self, and trust in the love and support that surrounded her. Irfan couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Lammis's venomous words to Sabine, her open hostility, her thinly veiled threats, all pointed to a deeper malice. He had witnessed her scheming ways before, her subtle manipulations and underhanded tactics. He suspected she was involved in more than just cruel gossip. He decided to investigate. He began by questioning the servants. He started with the kitchen maids, the ones who always had their ears to the ground, privy to the whispers and rumors that circulated throughout the palace. He approached them casually, inquiring about the general atmosphere in the palace, the gossip and intrigues that occupied their idle moments. He listened patiently as they recounted the latest scandals and petty squabbles, his mind sifting through the information, searching for any clues that might connect Lammis to something more sinister. He then spoke to the stable boys, the gardeners, the guards. Anyone who might have observed Lamis's movements, overheard her conversations, or witnessed anything unusual. He asked about the night of the spilled drinks, the incident that had led to his first dance with Sabine. Had anyone seen Lamis near Sabine just before she tripped? Had anyone noticed anything out of the ordinary? At first the answers were vague, non-committal. The servants were hesitant to speak ill of a noblewoman, especially one as powerful and influential as Lady Lamis. But Irfan persisted, gently probing, assuring them of his discretion, his genuine desire to uncover the truth. Slowly, cautiously, they began to offer small pieces of information, fragments of a larger puzzle. One of the stable boys mentioned seeing Lamis entering the ballroom late at night, just a few days before the royal ball. He had thought it odd, as the ballroom was usually locked at that hour. Another servant recalled overhearing a conversation between Lamis and one of her maids, a hushed exchange filled with veiled threats and cryptic references to a plan. A gardener mentioned finding a small, sharp knife hidden amongst the rose bushes, a knife that didn't belong to any of the palace gardeners. Irfan pieced together the fragments of information like a detective assembling clues at a crime scene. A pattern began to emerge, a disturbing picture of Lamis's scheming and manipulative nature. He realized that her cruelty towards Sabine was not simply a matter of jealousy or spite. It was part of a larger plan, a deliberate attempt to discredit Sabine, to ruin her reputation, to eliminate her as a potential rival. He still didn't know the full extent of Lamis's scheme, but he knew enough to be certain of one thing. Lady Lamis was dangerous, and Sabine was in danger. He resolved to uncover the truth, to expose Lamis's treachery, and to protect the woman he loved. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Lamis was cunning and resourceful, and she had powerful allies within the court. But Irfan was determined. He would not rest until he had unmasked the truth and brought Lamis to justice. Irfan sought a moment of quiet reflection in the palace library, a sanctuary of knowledge and tranquility. Rows upon rows of leather-bound books lined the walls, their spines whispering tales of history, philosophy, and poetry. He wandered through the silent aisles, his fingers trailing along the worn covers, his mind still preoccupied with the mystery surrounding Lamis and the growing danger to Sabine. He paused before a shelf filled with volumes of poetry, drawn by the familiar scent of aged paper and leather. He reached for a slim, unassuming book, its cover plain and unadorned. As he pulled it from the shelf, a small, leather-bound notebook slipped out from behind it, falling to the floor with a soft thud. He picked it up, his brow furrowed in curiosity. The notebook was identical to the one he had seen Sabine carrying in the gardens, the one she had so carefully concealed beneath her shawl. He hesitated for a moment, his conscience pricking him. Should he look inside? It felt like a violation of her privacy, a betrayal of her trust. But a nagging suspicion gnawed at him. What if the notebook contained some clue, some piece of information that could help him understand Lamis's motives or shed light on the danger surrounding Sabine? He reasoned that if it held something truly private, Sabine would have kept it hidden more securely. Perhaps she had simply misplaced it. He opened the notebook cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The pages were filled with elegant script, lines of poetry written in a delicate hand. He recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Sabine's. He began to read, his eyes scanning the verses, his mind absorbing the words. He read of the beauty of the morning dew on a rose petal, the quiet strength of a towering oak, the gentle kindness of a stranger's smile. He read of the pain of unrequited love, the sting of cruel words, the loneliness of feeling unseen and unheard. As he read, a wave of emotion washed over him. He was moved by the depth of Sabine's words, the raw honesty of her emotions, the beauty and sensitivity of her soul. He had known she was kind and compassionate, but he hadn't realized the extent of her intellect, her artistic talent, the hidden depths of her inner world. Her poetry revealed a vulnerability, a sensitivity, a profound understanding of the human heart that he had never glimpsed before. He read on, captivated by her words, drawn into the world of her imagination. He found in her poetry a reflection of his own feelings, his own struggles, his own longing for connection and understanding. He discovered a shared passion for beauty, a shared appreciation for the simple joys of life, a shared sense of wonder at the mysteries of the universe. He closed the notebook, his heart filled with a mixture of awe and admiration. He had found more than just clues to a mystery. He had found a window into Sabine's soul, a glimpse of her hidden depths, a confirmation of the deep connection he felt with her. He knew now, with absolute certainty, that his love for Sabine was real, that it was more than just a fleeting infatuation, more than a rebellious act against the expectations of his family and his court. He loved her for who she was, for her kindness, her strength, her beautiful spirit, and now, for the hidden poet she had kept concealed from the world. He knew he had to find a way to be with her, to share his life with the woman whose words had touched his heart so profoundly. The poet had been revealed, and in her words, Irfan found the courage to fight for their love, to defy the conventions of his world, and to claim the happiness he so desperately desired. Irfan knew he had to act quickly. Lamis's plot, whatever its exact nature, was a threat to Sabine, and he wouldn't stand idly by while she was in danger. He needed a plan, a way to expose Lamis's treachery and protect Sabine from her machinations. He couldn't confront Lamis directly. She was too cunning, too well connected. He needed proof, solid evidence that would convince his parents, the court, and the entire kingdom of her deceitful nature. He decided to confide in his most trusted advisor, Lord Elmsworth, a wise and loyal man who had served the royal family for decades. Elmsworth had always been a voice of reason and integrity, a steady presence in the often turbulent world of court politics. Irfan knew he could rely on Elmsworth's discretion and his unwavering commitment to justice. He summoned Elmsworth to his study, the same room where he had discovered Sabine's hidden poetry. He explained his suspicions about Lamis, detailing the incidents he had uncovered during his investigation, the whispered conversations, the hidden knife, the late-night visit to the ballroom. He showed Elmsworth Sabine's notebook, explaining the depth of her character, the beauty of her soul, the danger she faced from Lamis's jealousy and ambition. Elmsworth listened intently, his expression growing increasingly grave as Irfan spoke. When the prince finished, Elmsworth nodded slowly, his eyes filled with concern. "Your Highness," he said, his voice low and serious, "I believe you are right to be concerned. Lady Lamis is a dangerous woman, capable of great deception. We must proceed with caution, but we must act swiftly." Together, they devised a plan. They would enlist the help of a few trusted servants, those who had shown loyalty to Sabine and a willingness to speak out against Lamis's cruelty. They would discreetly gather more evidence, observe Lamis's movements, and document her interactions with others. They would create a web of witnesses ready to testify against her when the time came. They also decided to inform the captain of the Royal Guard, a man of impeccable integrity and unwavering loyalty to the crown. He would ensure the safety of the ballroom during the upcoming royal ball, deploying extra guards and keeping a close watch on Lamis and her associates. Irfan also knew he had to address the issue of Princess Amara. He couldn't keep stringing her along, pretending to be interested in a marriage he had no intention of pursuing. He decided to speak to his mother, to explain his feelings for Sabine, to make a case for a love match rather than a political alliance. He knew it would be a difficult conversation, but he was determined to be honest with his mother, to stand up for his own happiness, and to fight for the woman he loved. The plan was in place, a delicate balance of strategy and secrecy. The stakes were high, the risks considerable, but Irfan was resolute. He would expose Lamis's treachery, protect Sabine from harm, and claim his right to choose his own destiny. He was no longer a prince, caught between duty and desire. He was a man on a mission, driven by love and a fierce determination to protect the woman who had captured his heart. The night of the royal ball arrived, a glittering spectacle of silks and jewels. Music filled the grand ballroom, its lively melody echoing through the high-ceilinged hall. Noblemen and women, dressed in their finest attire, swirled across the polished marble floor. Sabine, dressed in a simple yet elegant gown of deep blue, stood near the edge of the ballroom, holding a tray of delicate pastries. She felt a nervous flutter in her stomach, her eyes constantly searching for Irfan. Lady Lamis, resplendent in a crimson gown that accentuated her slender figure, glided through the crowd, her eyes fixed on Irfan, who stood talking to his parents and Princess Amara. A triumphant smile played on her lips. Tonight, her plan would come to fruition. Tonight, Sabine would be ruined. As the music swelled, signaling the start of a new dance, a sudden creak echoed through the ballroom. The massive chandelier above, the one Lamis had sabotaged, began to sway precariously. The crystals clinked together, their delicate chime replaced by an ominous grinding sound. Panic rippled through the crowd. People gasped, pointing upwards, their faces pale with fear. The chandelier, its supporting chain severed, began its descent, a glittering rain of crystal and metal plummeting towards the dance floor. Queen Zarifa, caught beneath the falling chandelier, stood frozen in terror, unable to move. Sabine, seeing the queen's predicament, reacted instantly. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength, she lunged forward, shoving the queen out of harm's way just as the chandelier crashed to the floor. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Screams filled the air, mingling with the shattering of glass and the heavy thud of the fallen chandelier. Dust and debris swirled around Sabine, obscuring her from view. When the dust settled, the scene that unfolded was one of both horror and heroism. The chandelier lay in a mangled heap on the floor, its once brilliant crystals now shattered fragments. Queen Zarifa, shaken but unharmed, sat on the floor a few feet away, her eyes wide with shock. And Sabine lay amidst the debris, her shoulder twisted at an unnatural angle, her face pale with pain. Irfan rushed to Sabine's side, his heart pounding in his chest. He knelt beside her, his voice filled with concern. "Sabine, are you all right?" Sabine, her breath coming in ragged gasps, managed a weak smile. I pushed the queen out of the way," she whispered, her voice strained. Irfan's eyes filled with tears. He had never been so proud of her, so awed by her courage and selflessness. He gently cradled her head in his hands, his gaze filled with love and admiration. "You saved her life, Sabine," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You are a true hero." The ballroom was silent, the music replaced by the hushed murmurs of shock and concern. The queen, still trembling, was helped to her feet by Lady Lamis, who hovered solicitously at her side, feigning concern. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" Lamis asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy. That dreadful seamstress, so clumsy and careless, she nearly caused a tragedy. Irfan, cradling Sabine's injured shoulder, glared at Lamis. He knew, deep in his heart, that this was no accident. He suspected Lamis's involvement, but he needed proof. "Someone call for the physician!" he ordered, his voice sharp with authority. Then, turning to Lord Elmsworth, who had appeared at his side, he said in a low voice, Begin the investigation. I want to know exactly how this happened. Lord Elmsworth nodded grimly and immediately began questioning the servants, the guards, and anyone who might have witnessed the incident. The captain of the Royal Guard secured the ballroom, ensuring no one entered or left the scene. As the physician attended to Sabine's injured shoulder, Lord Elmsworth's investigation began to yield results. One of the servants, emboldened by Irfan's determination to uncover the truth, revealed that he had seen Lady Lamis near the chandelier earlier that evening, climbing a ladder and tampering with the chains. Another servant recalled overhearing Lamis discussing a plan to sabotage the chandelier and blame Sabine for the ensuing chaos. The small knife that Irfan had found in the gardens was retrieved and examined. It matched the markings on the severed chain of the chandelier. The evidence was mounting against Lamis, painting a clear picture of her deliberate sabotage and her malicious intent. Lord Elmsworth presented his findings to Irfan, his voice grave. "Your Highness, the evidence is conclusive. Lady Lamis sabotaged the chandelier, intending to cause harm and blame Lady Sabine." Irfan's face hardened. He had suspected as much, but hearing the confirmation of Lamis's treachery filled him with a cold fury. He looked at Sabine, her face pale with pain, but her eyes shining with courage. She had saved his mother's life, risking her own in the process, and Lamy had intended to frame her for the very chaos she had prevented. He turned to Lamis, who stood beside the Queen, her face now drained of its usual arrogance, replaced by a look of fear and desperation. "Lady Lamis," he said, his voice ringing with authority, "you are under arrest for attempted murder and treason. Your treachery has been exposed." The Queen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in disbelief. The court erupted in murmurs of shock and outrage. Lamis, her carefully constructed facade crumbling, stammered a denial, but her words were lost in the growing clamor. The guards stepped forward, seizing her arms and leading her away, her protests echoing through the silent ballroom. The truth was out. Lamis's wicked plot had been exposed, and justice at last would be served. The courtroom was hushed, the air thick with anticipation. The Queen, pale and shaken, sat beside the King, their faces etched with worry. The court officials, their usual chatter silenced, watched the proceedings with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Irfan stood before them, his gaze steady, his voice clear and strong. Beside him stood Sabine, her arm in a sling, her face still pale from her injury, but her eyes shining with quiet determination. "Your Majesties, members of the court," Irfan began, "we are gathered here today not to celebrate a joyous occasion, but to address a grave injustice. Lady Lamis, driven by jealousy and ambition, sought to harm not only Lady Sabine, but my own mother, the Queen." He recounted the events of the royal ball, the falling chandelier, Sabine's heroic act, and Lamis's treacherous plot. He detailed the evidence that had been uncovered, the testimonies of the witnesses, the undeniable proof of Lamis's guilt. He then turned to Sabine, his voice softening with affection. "Lady Sabine, a simple seamstress, a woman of uncommon kindness and courage, risked her own life to save the Queen. She acted without hesitation, without thought for her own safety. She demonstrated a level of bravery and selflessness that is rarely seen, even amongst those of noble birth." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the silent courtroom. "I believe that true nobility is not measured by titles or wealth, but by the qualities of one's heart, by one's actions and deeds. Lady Sabine, in her selfless act of heroism, has demonstrated the true heart of a queen." He then reached into his pocket and retrieved Sabine's small, leather-bound notebook. "I have discovered another facet of Lady Sabine's remarkable character," he continued, holding up the notebook. She is a poet, a gifted artist, whose words speak of beauty, compassion, and a deep understanding of the human spirit. He opened the notebook and began to read aloud, his voice filled with emotion. He read of the simple joys of life, the beauty of nature, the strength of the human spirit. He read of the pain of loss, the sting of betrayal, the enduring power of love. The courtroom listened in rapt silence, captivated by the beauty and depth of Sabine's words. As he finished reading, a murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. The Queen, her eyes filled with tears, reached out and took Sabine's hand. "My dear," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "you are a true blessing to this kingdom. I am forever in your debt." Irfan turned to his parents, his gaze steady, his voice firm. "Mother, Father, I love Sabine. I wish to marry her, not for political gain, not for duty or obligation, but for the simple reason that she is the woman I love, the woman who holds my heart, the woman who has shown me the true meaning of courage and kindness." The king and queen exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. They had witnessed Sabine's heroism, heard the beauty of her words, seen the depth of Irfan's love for her. They knew that their son had found a woman of exceptional character, a woman worthy of being his queen. The king nodded, his voice filled with warmth. "Irfan, my son, we give you our blessing. Marry the woman you love, the woman who has proven her worth not by her title, but by the goodness of her heart." A collective sigh of relief swept through the courtroom. Irfan smiled at Sabine, his eyes shining with love and happiness. He had defied the conventions of his world, challenged the expectations of his family and his court, and won the right to marry the woman he loved. He had found his queen, not in a princess of noble birth, but in a simple seamstress whose heart held the true measure of royalty. The bells of the royal chapel pealed joyfully, their melody echoing through the city streets. Banners of vibrant silks and gold adorned the palace walls, fluttering in the gentle breeze. The entire kingdom rejoiced as Prince Irfan and Sabine prepared to exchange their vows. Sabine, radiant in a gown of ivory silk, stood before the altar, her hand clasped in Irfan's. The queen, fully recovered from her ordeal, beamed with pride, her eyes sparkling with happiness for her son. The court, once filled with whispers of disapproval, now buzzed with excitement and admiration. Even the most skeptical noblewomen were captivated by Sabine's grace and the genuine love that shone in her eyes. Lady Lamis, stripped of her title and exiled from the kingdom, was a distant memory, a cautionary tale of ambition and treachery. Irfan, his eyes fixed on Sabine, spoke his vows with a sincerity that touched the hearts of everyone present. He promised to love and cherish her, to honor and respect her, to stand by her side through all the joys and challenges life would bring. Sabine, her voice soft but steady, echoed his vows, her words filled with love and devotion. She promised to be his partner, his confidant, his queen, to rule with wisdom and compassion, to serve the kingdom with kindness and integrity. As the archbishop pronounced them husband and wife, a cheer erupted from the assembled guests. Flower petals rained down from the balconies, showering the newlyweds in a fragrant cascade of color. Irfan and Sabine, their hands clasped tightly together, turned to face their kingdom, their faces radiant with love and happiness. The wedding feast was a joyous celebration, a testament to the unity and hope that had blossomed in the kingdom. Music filled the air, laughter echoed through the halls, and the tables groaned under the weight of delicious food and fine wines. Sabine, now Queen Sabine, moved gracefully among her guests, her warmth and kindness captivating everyone she met. In the weeks that followed, Queen Sabine, with Irfan's unwavering support, began to implement her vision for a more inclusive and compassionate kingdom. She established workshops throughout the land, where women of all shapes and sizes could learn the art of sewing, creating garments that celebrated the beauty of every body. She encouraged creativity and innovation, fostering a spirit of collaboration and empowerment. She established schools and libraries, providing opportunities for education and personal growth for all citizens, regardless of their social standing. Her kindness and generosity touched the lives of countless people, inspiring a new era of understanding and acceptance within the kingdom. She became a symbol of hope and inspiration, a testament to the power of a kind heart and a courageous spirit. Years passed, and the love between Irfan and Sabine deepened, their bond strengthened by shared values and a mutual commitment to their kingdom. They ruled with wisdom and compassion, their reign marked by peace, prosperity, and a flourishing of arts and culture. Their story became a beloved legend, a tale whispered from generation to generation, a reminder that true love knows no boundaries, that beauty comes in all shapes and sizes, and that a queen's worth is measured not by her appearance, but by the goodness of her heart and the impact of her deeds. And so Queen Sabine, the seamstress who had once been mocked and ridiculed, became a symbol of hope and inspiration, her legacy woven into the very fabric of the kingdom she so lovingly served.